Unpopular war president Donald Trump was at a Turning Point USA event in Phoenix tonight, trying to pump up the conservative youth vote in Arizona ahead of the midterms, although Donald Trump has no idea why.
And I was going to say that when a president wins, Republican or Democrat, for some reason they lose the midterms often, most of the time. It doesn't make sense. For some reason, a president, Republican, Democrat, the party does poorly in the midterms. It doesn't make sense. I'm still trying to figure it out.
The Atlantic seems to have figured it out. Tracy Calvo, a 61-year-old Democrat living on a fixed income, said she's poorer today than she was in 2024 when she voted for Trump, believing he would bring down prices. High gas prices mean that she is staying home more often, skipping Bible studies at her church, volunteering less, and even missing exercise classes. Trump's decision to go to war with Iran was her breaking point with the president. Quote, "I think that he just wants war," she said. "He's made it plain that he's adversarial with everybody." She doesn't plan on voting for any Republican, for that matter, in November. The Atlantic reports Trump's approval is lower right now than it was at this point ahead of the 2018 midterm elections, when Democrats won back the House in an historic blue wave. Almost every new poll is a red flag for Republicans. Independents, young voters, and Latinos, groups that were crucial to Trump's win in 2024, aren't in the bag anymore. At this point, it seems safe to declare that the historic coalition that powered the president's second reelection is finished, kaput. According to Yale University's spring 2026 poll, most voters, 57%, disapprove of President Donald Trump's job performance, compared to 41% who approve. Young voters overwhelmingly disapprove of the president's performance, with large majorities of voters aged 18 to 22, that's 68%, 23 to 29, 72%, and 30 to 34, 75%, expressing disapproval. It seems that has some Arizona Republicans wishing Donald Trump would stay away. Back to that report from The Atlantic. The storm cloud of negativity hanging over the president explains why his planned appearance in Arizona Friday will be so short. From touchdown to wheels up, Trump is scheduled to spend just 2 hours in Phoenix, we learned, a remarkably quick visit compared with his previous hours-long rallies featuring never-ending parades of MAGA loyalists. Some Republican operatives who expect to soon face highly competitive races want the president in and out of Arizona as quickly as possible. Quote, "When Trump comes out for a rally, he dominates the news the day before, the day of, and the day after," one GOP consultant told us. It's a reminder for voters of why they're angry. Joining us now, Democratic Congressman Greg Stanton of Arizona. Congressman, thank you very much for coming to The Last Word. Before you were in Congress, you were mayor of Phoenix. So how have the Trump promises of lower prices turned out?
The Trump's promise of lower prices have been a complete and total disaster. And it's the exact reason why at that Turning Point event in Phoenix today, about 1/3 of the seats were empty. And they were trying to target a young audience, but very few young people were in the audience because young people are repelled by this president, repelled by his policies. They're really smart. They know that they've done nothing to lower health care costs. In fact, just the opposite. By not supporting the extension of the Affordable Care Tax credits, they've made health care way, way more expensive, double and tripling premiums. The tariffs. The American people know the tariffs are a tax on them, raising prices of everyday goods, making groceries more expensive. And now the war in Iran, the war of choice, has significantly raised energy prices, gas prices. And so the American people know, young people know who to blame for it. And that is Trump and his policies and the Republicans in Congress who won't do anything to stand up to this president.
So I was going to ask you, what are you hearing from Arizona voters? But it sounds like you're getting an earful on health care, on prices, on the price of everything, and on the Iran war. Which one has people most vexed in Arizona?
Well, right now, of course, it's the Iran war. People who were sold a bill of goods by this president claiming to be the president of peace now finds us in a significant chance of a forever war. And they know the insanity of his policy. Iran did exactly what experts said they would do, close down the Strait of Hormuz, massively raising gas prices. So what does this president do? He releases sanctions on Iran and Russian oil, thereby helping Putin in the war with Ukraine, and of course helping Iran in their funding of actors in the arena in the Middle East that are doing terrible things in that region. People know that his policies are backwards and raising prices on the American people, and that's why his numbers are doing so poorly. He deserves the negative approval ratings that he has because of his horrific policies, and Republicans in Congress are also going to pay the price because the American people that know that they are doing nothing to rein in this president. They're not doing their jobs as members of Congress to provide oversight over this administration. And we're heading towards an authoritarian type government, and that's not what the American people want.
Well, to that point, Congressman Stanton, the Cook Political Report has two Arizona House races as toss-ups. Arizona won in suburban Phoenix. Republican Congressman David Schweikert is running for governor, leaving that seat open. The other is Arizona 6 in southern Arizona, where Republican Congressman Juan Ciscomani is running for a re-election. Can Democrats flip both of those seats?
We will. We're going to flip both of those seats. I mean, the Joanna Mendoza, who's running against Juan Ciscomani in southern Arizona, Juan Ciscomani announced raising $1.1 million last quarter. She raised $2.3 million. She more than doubled up the incumbent. That sends a strong message about where the energy is in Arizona 06. In AZ01 in Maricopa County, that's one of the most competitive seats in the country. We have a competitive primary on the Democratic side, really strong candidates. We're going to have a great candidate coming out of that race, and we're going to win that open seat against the Trump-supported Jay Feely, the former kicker of the Arizona Cardinals. I think he'll realize, he spoke at today's event at Turning Point. I think he'll realize towards the end of this race, when it gets close to the end, he's going to rue the day that he accepted that Trump appointment. That's going to be the kiss of death, not really supportive like it may have been in the past. And don't forget, we have a great candidate in northern Arizona, Jonathan Nez, the former president of the Navajo Nation, who has a really good chance of a significant upset in northern Arizona against Eli Crane. We're going to punch above our weight in Arizona, and Trump can come every day he wants. The more Trump appears in Arizona, the better we're going to do in the midterms.
Some big optimism there in Arizona. Arizona Congressman Greg Stanton, thank you very much.